And then, after about 6 months of this, I had a very strange friend who lived in Palo Alto. He still is my great inspiration. I wish I could coax him into public display because he's the real Terence McKenna. But if you're the real Terence McKenna, you have too much good taste to ever do what I do. But he came to me. His style was to get there first, whatever it was, to do it, to reject it, and to be absolutely contemptuous of it by the time anybody else even arrived at the scene of the crime. So in early 1967, he came to my house in Berkeley one rainy February night, and he said, something you might be interested in. And I said, what's that? And he said, this is a material that has been boosted from an Army research project being run down at SRI, and someone managed to get a 50-gallon drum of this material out of the inventory without anybody knowing. And I said, what is it? And he said, it's called DMT. And I said, it's a psychedelic drug, right? And he said, right. And I said, how long does it last? And he said, 3 minutes. And I said, no problem, bring it on. Because after all, I had been assaulted by Life magazine on the subject of LSD, and I had gotten that under my belt, and I was by now relatively sophisticated about cannabis. I figured there were probably no more frontiers to cross. And so we sat down then and there and did it. And about 15 seconds after toking up on this stuff, I found myself plunged into an elf nest somewhere on the other side of the universe. In other words, there were, and thank God no one fills in for me because they know it so well, jeweled self-dribbling basketballs. Did I get it right? Jeweled self-dribbling basketballs that came bounding toward me from all corners of this domed underground space. Well, I had been used to hallucinations, acceleration of thought, funny ideas, strange insights, hysterical waves of giggling, so forth and so on. I had never seen anything like what I was now face to face with. And also, whatever this substance was, it didn't affect me. It didn't affect my perception of who I was. In other words, it seemed to me that the drug wasn't working. It was simply that the world had disappeared and been replaced by something else. And I was still who I had been a few moments before, except now I was fairly alarmed by what had just happened to the architecture and geography of Southern Telegraph Avenue. And these things, there was an overwhelming sense of affection, involvement, a sense that I hadn't experienced since being 6 years old and being released on Christmas morning to run out to the Christmas tree. And there was a sense of childlike innocence under conditions of extraordinary alienness and unfoldment. And just, I was boggled, the mind boggled. I at last understood the real meaning of this new cliche at that time. And these things were making objects with their voices. They were singing. in this unearthly, crystalline, punning, elf chatter kind of language. But it was not something simply heard. It was something which I could see. I could see syntax unfolding like ribbons being spewed out of machines, shooting across my visual field, rolling into balls, condensing as objects with rotating crystalline facets and machined interiors of gold and ivory and chrysolite. And these objects were themselves emitting strange, singing, language-like noises. And the whole thing was happening at an enormous speed, almost like a Bugs Bunny cartoon run backwards at about 3 times ordinary speed. Well, I barely had time to take all of this in and, assure myself that I wasn't dying before it collapsed. The way a tent collapses, the way an ice cream cone melts, the way an erection disappears, the way an investment goes bad. It just was gone. And my friend, I was sitting there, I opened my eyes, and my friend said, "So what do you think?" And I was stunned. I've never actually seen it hit anybody quite as hard as it hit me. For about 15 minutes, all I could say was, "I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe that. I can't believe that." You call that a drug? You must be nuts. Drugs don't do that. I mean, drugs speed you up, slow you down, make you fall down, stuff like that. This is no drug. It's magic. It masquerades as a drug. It's a doorway into another world. I kept having the image of Aladdin's lamp, my favorite fairy tale, and I felt like Aladdin. You buy something in a junk shop, you take it home, you try to clean it up. The next thing you know, a flame a mile high pours out and demands to do your bidding. That was the impression I had. And it's the impression I still have. That must have been early 1966, 66, 76, 86. What is it? 36 years ago? That's not possible. 26 years ago. Nothing has particularly changed. Nothing has ever surpassed it. And for me, that was the moment that set my auto compass for life. I mean, I said, this I must understand. Not only did my mother not tell me and my father not tell me, but Aldous Huxley never told me, and neither did John of the Cross, and neither did Meister Eckhart. All those people were apparently flying at a lower altitude than I, 19-year-old brat in ratty rented room, have been able to achieve in the last 15 minutes. And so then I began to look for this, or for some trace of it, in the history of human philosophy, in the history of art, in ethnography, everywhere, and I really didn't find it. And I really still don't find it, except there are certain faint footprints in the blowing sand of human experience that if you've seen the vision, you can follow these footprints back to something like this source. First of all, I went to the library, none of the heads that I knew could make any sense out of this at all. For them, LSD defined the top of the ladder. Well, with this stuff, LSD and being a local PA meeting down seem to be two states of mind merged together on some horizon of straightness. So I went to the library and began reading more intensively in more focused fashion. And I learned that in South America, there were 5 people who apparently utilized plants that had this stuff in it. Now, at that time, this was 67, this was new information that had arrived in the domain of botanical scholarship really in the previous 5 to 10 years through the work of people like Richard Evans Schultes at Harvard and William Safford and other people had described this chemical being present in these aboriginal intoxicants. So far as I could tell, no academic had ever done it because no description matched what I had experienced. And when I discussed this with my friend who had brought me to this place, he said that he felt that probably it was impossible to attain these kinds of concentrations outside the laboratory. And that meant, if true, that these shamanic practitioners and societies that were utilizing this were utilizing it, but that they themselves had no real awareness of what it was potentially like when concentrated through modern analytical and laboratory techniques. So it really wasn't a choice. I mean, I guess that's what it's like when you get your calling. It's just a little hard for me to imagine that, being a CPA or city planner or something like that could seize you by the ears with the kind of intensity that this seized me. I mean, I said, I've got to understand this stuff. This is the most amazing thing. And the second most amazing thing was that nobody seemed to know about it. I mean, I couldn't understand why there weren't 11-inch high headlines on every newspaper on the planet saying, doorway to hyperspace discovered, elf negotiations proceeding, something like that. No, apparently it was a private mystery or known but to a very few. And I immediately after coming down was seized by an absolutely messianic desire to expose other people to this and see what they said, because it just seemed so important to share it. So that's basically what I've been doing ever since, and trying to draw conclusions, trying to understand what is this, number one. How is it that it can coexist with the world of George Bush and not be discussed or not be part of the mix of social concerns? I mean, after all, we're a society where people jump out of airplanes on weekends because their lives are so boring and empty. Well, then, if you think jumping out of an airplane is a thrill to write home about, you should try this stuff. No one would jump out of an airplane if they had DMT on their menu. But no, apparently it isn't about that. Well, then I came to feel that it is, and I still sometimes offhandedly refer to it like this, that it is secret. It is not a secret. It is the secret. There is a secret, and this is it. It is the secret that the world is not only not the way you think it is, it's that the way the world is a way that you can't think it is, because you simply do not have the imaginative capacity to conceive of such overwhelming peculiarity. And how this secret is able to coexist with the rest of mundane reality, maintain its integrity, and not become the object of pogrom, religion, hysteria, and repression is part of the mystery of what the secret is. You see, a secret is not something untold. It's something which can't be told. And even as I sit here, I realize that I'm obliquely approaching it. No matter how weird I say it is, no matter what scintillating metaphor I create to attempt to beguile you into imagining what you can't imagine, I'm perfectly aware that I'm falling short of the goal. I'm creating a symbol of what it is. But frankly, words fail. And I'm a word kind of guy. So then, the rest of my life can be basically poured into a nutshell. It's just been a lot of wandering around in various fringy places, talking to a lot of fringy people, and trying to figure out what is the real importance of this for me personally, because that's where I'm living, obviously, and for everybody else, because I assume that there is absolutely nothing extraordinary about me. I didn't have these experiences because I'm in the lineage of Ramana Maharshi or some malarkey like that. I had that experience because I'm a human being. And every human being can have this experience.